when you talk about then nuclear energy, does anybody know why nuclear energy is considered, very controversial? Sorry? Waste, right. That's a very valid point, because of the nuclear waste that it generates, that is the radioactive substances which are super harmful to human health. Does anybody know any other reason why they say, like, nuclear energy is super controversial and it cannot be a viable solution? So I'll tell you. So where these nuclear minings happen, those are very unsafe environment. Like they have some mining techniques in which they dig under the earth to take out uranium and radioactive substances, and now they're coming up with like new techniques in which they go to the ocean floor, and then those are machine based and they can take out the radioactive substances from there. But this entire debate around nuclear energy, which does offer like a potential solution, is because of the human rights issue. So there is a big human rights factor to people who are mining inside the ground to take out those nuclear substances, their health, their different aspects of it. So you get the picture. And which is why like nuclear is considered very controversial in international arena, and like different countries have different stance around it. Like some countries have named their Ministry of Environment, it's like Ministry of Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety. So they kind of, in the hindsight, try to promote nuclear energy. Well, there were some countries which are like totally no to nuclear, and then there are human rights groups all around the world. There are human rights organizations which are again very radical, and they are like totally disregarding nuclear energy as even a potential. So in India, does anybody know where we have nuclear power plants in India? Sorry? Yes, in Tamil Nadu we have one, and sorry? In Allahabad? Sorry? Didn't get you. Okay, I'm not able to hear, but I'm definitely sure that what you're saying is correct. And we have like, I think 2 nuclear plants in India. There are like a couple of more coming up. And Japan, for example, has a very controversial history because their nuclear power plants once had issues and there was a waste thrown up and those kind of things. And then nuclear itself has a very big history because of what happened in the World War II. The atom bombs were dropped and those kind of things. And now you see North Korea and US showing how big their buttons are when they talk about nuclear missiles and those kind of things. So it's very controversial, and all thanks to Einstein, who said that, I mean, this is just an anecdote, not an informal anecdote, that Albert Einstein, he was very depressed after, he discovered his relativity theory, because he said like, this gives a very potential way of like wiping out the entire population of the Earth, his relativity theory, and after the world wars happened, he was still alive that time, and he was very, very disappointed. He left his work and those kind of things, and he stopped researching further on relativity theory, and that affected him. So nuclear itself has a very complicated background. Coming back to now solar energy, or the solar renewable systems that are there. What do you think are disadvantages of solar energy, or implementing it or setting it up? Not just like India, think globally. What are some potential disadvantages? Don't tell me that simply that sun is not there all the time, of course. But apart from that, what are the disadvantages of solar energy? Or if you have heard something regarding solar panels or something. Yeah, solar panels are costly, although like government has been trying to subsidize them, but there's also a big element of waste, electronic waste that would be generated in long term because of the solar cells, solar panels and those things. But definitely like that is something that, I mean, this world has wonderful engineers, and therefore sure they can figure out a way to combat that problem before it have more waste efficient, is that even a word, solar panels which are there. But solar power in India is a very growing market, and last month there was an announcement actually that India is going to build the world's biggest solar power plant. I don't remember which place it was. I think it was somewhere in South India itself. Kerala, yeah, thank you. They're going to build like the world's biggest solar power plant. Right now, the world's biggest solar power plant is in Morocco. It's the country near above equator, up there in below Mediterranean Sea, and they have like very beautiful solar power plant, and it generates a lot of electricity. And then again, solar. You know what are photovoltaic grids, PV grids? So everybody, I mean, knows what these normal electricity grids are. How electricity is transmitted from power, like their power plant to main station to substation, and then it comes to your houses and those kind of things. So similarly, you have PV grids, which are basically the photovoltaic grids, and there have been a lot of development, especially European Union and Morocco have been collaborating to fetch energy from deserts and then transfer it to Europe and other areas. And what would happen then is that they say, oh, there is, they would pay for that on-ground thing in the desert to work, so they create more jobs, and it's like, it's a cool way to get energy. But then again, what happened last year, that a very big debate again arose out of this, that said, oh, this is colonism again, developed countries taking resources out of developing countries, that you install solar panels and then you take the electricity generated from it in your own country without like substantially giving anything. And that is why there are projects like Desertec and other things which aim to like install big solar panel and big solar renewable systems in deserts, and then try to make global grids to send the energy. And maybe hopefully sometime in the future we might have that implemented in a broader scale. In India, this is actually from a research that I was reading last year, and it's not very clear. I'm not sure if everybody can view it. So this just explains like what, how, which segments of India where renewable energy systems are, which one are progressing higher, which one are deteriorating, and what does the relative progress look like, and what is the business potential of these areas. So you see this green thing that is like the Rajasthan, the desert. It's because like in deserts you receive maximum sunlight and those things. So you have higher potential of renewable energy generation. And again, this is here yellowish because of the nuclear power plant that India has. And this one kind of falls in a little less because there is less business potential. They lack those kind of sources of renewable energy to be there. So we have talked about a lot about what India or what global negotiations have been doing, what different countries have been saying. Now, an important question is, what is India's policy, or what is India's plan to actually have renewable energy systems installed in their country, or how is India actually, trying to move from a fossil fuel based economy, that is coal and natural gas and petroleum, towards transitioning more towards the cleaner technologies such as renewable energies or cleaner variants of clean coal and those different ethanol mixed petroleum, or the different things that are coming up. At this point of time, again, like I'm going to try to make you guys talk and say something, and even if this is not successful even the second time, no problem, I will still continue speaking. So please, just give yourself a couple of minutes and brainstorm what do you think is the main problem in India when it comes to its implementation of these things. Like India has a nice policy, like they have really good targets. I would come to that in next slide, but I want you to think, when you think about India generally, okay, we're trying to make a change, consider any new policy that is being made and they're trying to implement it. What are the potential hindrances that you feel could be causing India to, lag behind sometimes? So please spend some time talking. You don't have to report back to me, but just talk to each other for a couple of minutes and then we resume back. Alrighty, people. Thank you. Is there anybody who would like to share back something, your thoughts, anything? Please feel free to do so, otherwise I will continue with what I was saying. Anyone at all? Yes, please, the lady in green.
Actually, in India, we have less than 30% below poverty, or we, like the government has to see in the micro level where but for the people who is below poverty, they will think like at the end the food should be cooked for them. So I guess the main disadvantages will be like the government should think over the micro level where the implement should be goes, or it should reach them. So I guess it's the main reason why the renewable energy thinking is not applying to India.
Yep, yep. Very, very valid point made. I would comment on that shortly. Is there somebody else who would like to share back what they think? Anyone? Okay. In case not, please feel free to stop me anytime when I'm talking and say anything that you would want to. So, I mean, what she said right now is actually, like the very core of the problem that we are facing. And this is also why climate change, or, tackling environmental problems is not just one-dimensional. Like, you just cannot say, oh, I can make an environmental policy for my country and not think about anything. No, you would have to think about the cross-cutting issues of education, of poverty alleviation, and so many things tied to it, of gender equality, human rights, and so many elements that then come into picture, and which is why delivering effective policies become a big hindrance in India when it comes to environment. So, I mean, should the government care about, or like, not just the government, like should we care about first educating our people, first giving them basic amenities, or then should we just directly care about, making them environmental friendly? So there comes a very big challenge that India then sees, and it's similar for other developing nations in the world who are facing this. Like, they don't, like, environment cannot be of uttermost or the highest priority for developing nations. But of course, like, it has to be a priority, especially when you talk about India. You see the northern belt, the river Ganges, and everything that is there, the industries area around that, that is putting a lot of our ecosystem into a problem. And you have Himalayas up there, and any disturbance there would potentially affect the entire Himalayan ecosystem. And again, rivers which are perennial, like Ganga and in South Godavari, we need to preserve them so that they don't dry off sometime, and because that is our primary source of drinking water, and we need to preserve them. So there are many things related to that, and then there is entire debate about forest cover of India, which was 33%, I think, like 10 years ago, but I don't remember the exact numbers now. But government had rolled out policies on making or increasing the forest cover of India through afforestation programs and those kind of things. But I talked about Paris Agreement, and I talked about how countries come together and frame. So now the question is how those countries actually implement something like that. So there is a global framework, and how do the countries implement? So for implementation, you go into this thing called as NDCs, which is the nationally determined contributions. And then you have something called as NAPs, which are national action plans. And these are a set of policies which are prepared, not policies, but more like guidelines or targets which are prepared by each country, and which need to conform to the targets which are specified in those global framework. And India claimed last year that it would achieve its Paris Agreement target by 2027, because that is 3 years early, because the deadline of achieving your targets in 2027 is, in Paris Agreement, is 2030. So India is kind of on a good road if you think of the bigger picture, but like a smaller picture, of course, is then has many elements of poverty, has many different elements when you break it down on a micro level, and it's not that simple. But some regulations on big industries, or the transition that India is trying to have from a coal-based economy to more renewable based. They have been trying to shut down some old power plants, and it has been going good, but there definitely needs to be done a lot. India's NDC, the Nationally Determined Contributions, it's a very beautifully written, like 60-page document. It begins with a shlok in Sanskrit shlok, and it goes on to describe manifold. I would suggest you all to read it sometime if you have time. You just Google for NDC of India, and you would see, you would grasp a lot about what India intends to do in terms of forest cover, in terms of climate change education, in terms of renewable energies, and a lot more things that basically are priority of India, overlapping with a lot of things. And India also has its own big section on preservation of wildlife, animals, tigers, and that thing, because we are a very rich country in terms of the biodiversity we have, because we are a tropical country. We are one of the very few countries on the earth who experience all 5 seasons. We have rich vegetation, we have rich ecosystem, wildlife, and all of that then somehow get intersected with the climate change debate, because we kind of lose a lot. We don't lose less like other countries, we lose a lot when you come to biodiversity. So, oops, did I just stop it? No. Something happened? Yeah. I'll get there. Yeah, so these are some of the main highlights from the India's NDC. So this is also where renewable energy segment of India comes into picture. So you see, India has a target of having 175 gigawatt by 2022 from renewable energy sources in India. They reported back that they already have like 40 gigawatts now or something like that, and that they're going in a good direction, but we don't know if that is, but it's a very ambitious target. A lot of people experts have said that this is a very, solar being the most attractive segment of the entire industry, has drawn a lot of attention from private players, and they have and this is important because India and Norway, they have been working together on global scale. There have been a lot of technology transfers and those things, and renewable energy market, like Norway and India jointly secure 1 million investment. And so India's NDC, or the government, also talks about a very cool thing called as the Green Energy Corridor Program, which is about how the transmission lines have to be built for renewable energy. Because I told you earlier, transmission lines, I'm not sure if there are any electrical students here, but I'm from an electronics background, and transmission lines have losses as energy or electricity goes through them. And those transmission lines then need to be built in a way that so as to minimize that loss. And in renewable energies, that loss has become more, because it's not like the very standard source of energy on which the conventional transmission lines have been built. So this is also something that India has been trying to develop, or the Indian government has been trying to implement. So I mean, this is what basically I had to tell you about renewable energy in India, technology, connecting it, policy. I'm just going to spend a couple of more minutes telling you about how young people across the world are fighting towards this and how they are active in negotiations. So UNFCCC has different constituencies, civil society constituencies such as environmental NGOs, women and gender, and they have a youth constituency in which we have about 300 youth organizations which are part of it. And in every negotiation, the big COP negotiations, we have about 300 youth who come from different parts of the world, and they're engaged in the process. And they are also engaged basically in not just observing the process, but also interacting and lobbying for different demands and following the negotiations, getting the right elements in. And we earlier in November last year, this last November, the youth group played a very important role in the negotiations that were going on about the climate change education and public participation that they were having. And so there have been a lot of things going on. If you ever want to know more, you can just search about, Google youth participation in UNFCCC processes, and there are multiple avenues where you would find how you can engage in these international processes and be involved. And I mean, we often see that because of lack of financial resources, a lot of young people from the countries of developing countries are not able to participate in these events, and more than that, there is a lack of knowledge or capacity building. Like you cannot just take somebody into a conference and you can make them work, because those are very complex to understand. So there needs to be a proper capacity building or training, which is what we were doing in the project that Prashant earlier talked about, the Global South Scholarship Program. We selected like 30 people from 30 different countries, from developing countries, and they were selected from 4,000 applications that we received. And they received like 2 months training, and then they were taken into 1 month in Germany for the negotiations that were going on. And that was a very, very diverse group, and we had people from island states. Like those were youth from the countries which are never represented. We had one girl from Nepal as well, and we received like 200 applications even from India. So yeah, that is all I had to talk about. And I know it's lunchtime, so I would not take more of your time. And at this point of time, if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them to me, no matter how small or big they may be, and I'm happy to answer back. Anything at all that you may want to ask, argue, or know more, I'm happy to share. Otherwise, we can end this here and wish you all a very good lunchtime and afternoon nap for those who go back to hostel after this and sleep. And thank you very much.